Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of
WHOSAY!
So I am Stacey. I am a year 2 finance and law major.
I'm Chuan. I'm a year 4 sociology major, and I'm also an NUS peer student supporter.
I'm Somesh. I'm a student wellness manager with the Office of Student Affairs.
So right now we're coming into the exam season, and because of this stress, there's this cortisol trend going on. Have you heard of it?
Yes, so I think I've seen it on TikTok. They're feeling like their cortisol levels are high, and it's become the word they're using is cortisol being high, and I think the word is being used very loosely. I think that's kind of worrying for me.
Why is that so?
What cortisol is actually supposed to help with our immunity, supposed to help with to control our blood sugars, our metabolism, our immune system. So in a way, cortisol is actually good. There's this mistaken concept where people, when they associate cortisol to stress, where it's actually a stress hormone. It is a hormone which is very important in helping us with our sleep-wake cycles. So in the morning helps us to wake up, and at night helps us to sleep. And this is actually, it's also a response to our stress.
Is this high cortisol level a bad thing?
It helps with our focus and our reaction time. So that probably also allows students to perform better in exams when there are these short-term cortisol spikes. However, when it becomes chronic, that's when it actually becomes a problem. Our alertness gets affected. In terms of our emotions, I think people tend to become more irritable and also anxious probably. When it comes to cortisol spikes that are chronic, what happens to our physicality is that we also tend to become, there's issues with there might be headaches, which psychosomatic symptoms that might appear.
So these characteristics or symptoms, right, are things that I and my peers experience during exam season. So does that mean that we, have chronic high cortisol? Or
it would be hard to distinguish, but if this is happening over a prolonged period of time, I think it may be an issue.
I think personally, when it comes to exam season, it's definitely very natural to get stressed. It's so many assignments, so many things to juggle. It gets very overwhelming very quickly. For me personally, I found it very helpful to take breaks. I really need rest. That's why I think it's important to plan for breaks, to plan for rest.
So a number of things that I think students could do to help with cortisol spikes, especially if it's chronic or if it's long-term, is that there's this thing called a Pomodoro technique. So it's when students can probably use time blocking, which I think is what he stated, to help them. So for example, studying for a certain period of time and then taking a 25-minute breather, and then after that, going back to studying. So ensuring you have 7 to 9 hours of sleep, uninterrupted sleep if you can. I know it is very difficult for university students, but it's something that I think should be a non-negotiable. And of course, social support, your friends around you to provide you with that, to prevent you from having this chronic cortisol level spike. So social support, yes, and mindfulness, if you can practice mindfulness in your day-to-day. So you can come to the pit stop, for example, where we are seated today, and probably get some rest. I think these are ways in which we can manage cortisol spikes.
Just now, Somesh, you mentioned that sleep should be a non-negotiable, right?
Yeah.
And I really think that's where I found the most helpful thing to adopt when it comes to managing stress.
And to add on, I think nutrition and hydration should be things that we do not forget. I think when it comes to sleeping, 30 minutes to 1 hour before sleeping, try to avoid caffeine. Try to avoid looking at your phone if possible, because I know these are things that we tend to do, especially looking at our phones before bed. But if we can possibly put our phones away, based on a student life survey that we have been doing over the years, I think sleep seems to be an issue which is an issue for many students. I think they're getting less than 5 hours of sleep, many of our students, because of various responsibilities that they have to juggle. And I hope they can find that balance eventually.
But how about for students who really just need help managing their stress in the moment?
For me, actually, I guess this depends also on the lecturers and the professors. What has been most helpful is talking to them directly and asking hey, can I get an extension for this? So I've never, I'm coming from sociology. I guess maybe that's also why. I've never had a professor reject a deadline, a request for a deadline extension. I feel a bit bad for asking for extensions, but because I don't know, it just feels as if I'm taking the easy way out or not.
I think for myself, there are a number of resources I think that are available to support students. I think before we go into the resources, there's one thing that I think I also like to highlight, which is this thing called cognitive reframing. So when students go into an exam, instead of seeing it as a threat, they can actually see it as a challenge that they probably can also help with cortisol levels. And so in terms of the NUS ecosystem of support, we have many such resources. So one being, of course, our university counseling services. If students feel that their cortisol levels are really chronic and they really need tangible support from a professional like a counselor or a psychologist, they can go to the university counseling services. I think for mental health issues, probably something more, if they need to see a psychiatrist, they can go to university health services. And the other services that are there are, of course, the student support managers. If they need extension deadlines, they are struggling to actually talk to their professors, as you mentioned, they can actually go to the student support managers and they can help them to look at probably seeing other arrangements through the student support managers.
I noticed that for me and my peers, a lot of us like end up working up until we're about to sleep and then not being able to fall asleep, and we end up scrolling on our phones for a long time trying to wind down, and then we end up staying up late, and this cycle just continues. Does this result in bad effects? Because we do somehow end up sleeping anyway at the end of the day, and if it does have some negative impacts, how could we improve?
First, I think incorporating some sort of movement. I think probably there will be discussion about the 7 pit stop principles, but movement in the sense of exercise, it can definitely help to regulate our cortisol levels because it will allow us to also feel tired and then probably fall asleep. So sleep, as I said, nutrition and hydration, very important. And last but not least, also ensuring that we have the discipline to put our phones away when needed and to incorporate our sleep hygiene to make it 7 to 9 hours so that we can be attentive and productive the next day, and to also help to regulate our baseline cortisol levels.
When you are in this period of high stress, you should also definitely be gentler with yourself.
Yes, I think we have to, at the end of the day, practice self-compassion and kindness to ourselves, because I think at the end of the day, if we are too harsh on ourselves, of course there will be negative consequences. And as you correctly pointed out, all of us procrastinate. So it is something which is very human nature, and we should normalize the fact that we all will procrastinate at some point in our lives, and it happens to me at many junctures as well. So to be kind to ourselves, to practice self-compassion, and at the end of the day, use it as a crutch for us to see how we can improve probably certain elements in our life, like our sleep, like our nutrition, our hydration, our exercise, to see how that probably helps us.
I'm quite curious about something. So we talk about sleep in terms of like time, so 7 to 9 hours. Does the quality matter, and also the time into which I sleep? So for example, if I choose to stay up late, stay up the whole night, and then I sleep from 8 a.m. all the way to the evening.
Yeah.
Does it will it help me, or is it actually not a good idea?
Okay. So I'm not a sleep scientist, so but I can definitely say that, as I was talking about the diurnal rhythm, right? So when we are sleeping, we are not nocturnal creatures. When we're sleeping, I think probably the ideal hours, I think based on research, is definitely got to do in the nighttime. And I think there's also research to prove that sleeping and having naps can be actually very good for our cognitive functioning as well. And that's something that we can consider as well. There are many facets when we look at rest, and I think everybody has their own ways in which they use rest as a way to probably help them with their energy levels, not only in the aspect of being productive, but in all aspects of their life.
Earlier, you mentioned something about pit stop principles. So what is pit stop, and what are these principles?
So pit stop is like a place for students to rest and just like chill out, hang out. So it's like a no study zone also. You're not it's basically one of the rare precious spaces, I guess, in university where you're not allowed to study. The pit stop principles are actually from like the acronym pit stop. So there are 7 principles. It goes: P is for personal skills, I is for interaction, T is for time out, S is for sleep, T again is for thoughtful eating, O is for on the move, and P is for purpose. Yeah. So all of this is like to try and help guide us to reconnect with ourselves, to prioritize our own well-being.
I think Samesh previously expounded on some of the pit stop principles like the sleep or thoughtful eating. So could you maybe elaborate on maybe interaction or on the move or purpose?
So I guess I can talk a bit about like interaction. One thing that I found for me personally is like when I'm stressed out, I am like kind of cranky. I'm kind of like just I don't know. It just feels like I don't want to be around people. But paradoxically, it's like actually help being with like close friends and like talking to them helps a lot in that regard, because it's I guess it's just like having someone be there and like hear you out, witness like what I'm going through, and yeah, just me being able to share that with someone else makes it feel easier for some reason.
I think providing that psychologically safe space and also being an active listener as a friend, because not providing solutions at the end of the day is great, because I think sometimes students, what they're looking for is just someone who can listen to them,
Thanks for sharing these like stress relieving tips. What resources are available to students on campus for those who need help and support, or maybe for those who like want to learn more?
So we have an NUS ecosystem of support. If students actually look up the student support directory, they'll be able to see a list of resources. The student support managers who look into their academic issues that they want like clarity about. For example, like time extensions. There are student wellness managers and residential wellness managers, which provide emotional. There are also the counselors and psychologists at university counseling services, as well as psychiatrists at University Health Center to support students as well. There are also a lot of activities happening on campus. So for example, there's Wellness Festival, which is actually a mental wellness awareness month that happens, which is actually organized by the student wellness team on campus to raise awareness on mental health. And that's why we have the 8 pit stops across NUS to help allow students to come in, take part in activities like candle making, there are flower arrangements, all kinds of activities actually happening every semester.
And then to add on to that, since I'm an NUS peer student supporter, you can also find us at like the pit stops. So as a NUS peer student supporter, what we are is like we're trained to listen. Again, Somesh said like listen, not to provide solutions, right? So it's really about like providing that psychologically safe space. So we have this like motto, it's like holding space. We were at the U-Town pit stop and the YIH pit stop. So the U-Town both of these pit stops are open from Monday to Friday, 1 to 5 p.m. and you can find like the PSS there. Yeah.
I think what is great is that during that time where the PSS are at the pit stop from 1 to 5 p.m., if students come in and they are feeling anxious or they're feeling stressed and they need support, they can talk to their peers if they do not feel like they want to approach a professional in NUS. And so that space is given where they can have conversations with their peers, and hopefully if they are willing to seek further support, then their peer student supporters can then bring the students to us, student wellness managers, and we can attend to them respectively. So there is an entire process in which we can provide support to students at the pit stop if they are feeling stressed.
Okay, so thank you so much for sharing more about the science behind stress and also about stress management tips. So for our listeners back home, if you all are feeling stressed during the exam period, feel free to come down to pit stop and relax. And also feel free to tap onto our NUS ecosystem for support. Thank you so much for listening. Please do follow us on our socials to keep up with future episodes. And we'll see you in another episode of WHOSAY! Bye!